Mark Gottfried, former Alabama coach and Alabama player, with us now on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. Good to see you again, Coach. It's been a while. How you been?
I'm doing fantastic. I hope you guys are well, too.
We're good. You know what, Dunaway, or somebody sent us. You didn't find it. Somebody sent us. Lance was not able to make it, but I don't know if you remember this. You put the media through a practice once, and me and Dunaway came over there. He found the picture. I'll text it to you. He found the picture, or somebody found it and sent it to us. That is an old picture.
I had great hair.
If I can remember correctly, I don't think I offered any scholarships to the media after that practice. I don't think anyone qualified.
We were out of eligibility for sure.
Yeah. Hey, I know we'll get into this game, but just NIL in itself and how much this thing has changed since you were coaching. Do you think there's anything about NIL you would have enjoyed?
Well, first of all, I love the fact that players are able to get some compensation. And, you got to remember, I coached Ed O'Bannon for 5 years at UCLA, and Ed and I are close. And so I tell people all the time, every student athlete in the country ought to give 1% of whatever they get to Ed O'Bannon, because he's the one that really spearheaded all this. So I'm happy for him. I just wish that there were some guardrails. I wish it was controlled a little bit more. I don't think this wild, wild west, which is going on right now, is best for really anybody, even the kids. But all in all, I think it's good that kids are allowed to make money off of their name, image, and likeness, if that's truly what it is.
This Auburn-Alabama rivalry has gotten really, really intense. I know it was important to Wimp when you played there. But when you were coaching there, wasn't it Mississippi State that was really – it felt like there was a lot more bad blood between Mississippi State and Bama than Bama and Auburn.
Maybe bad blood was there, but it's funny. Rick Stansbury, were actually pretty good friends right now.
Don't ruin it for me. Don't,
never seemed like it.
No, don't ruin
it. I know. Time heals all wounds. But, the Alabama game was always big as a player, and then obviously, as a coach too. And if you remember, people may not remember this. When I took the job at Alabama, I was 32 years old, just turned 33. And Cliff Ellis, Auburn was actually on the cover of Sports Illustrated, Chris Porter. And they were a preseason. I'm not sure if they were preseason one, and that maybe just was the Sports Illustrated thing. But they were awfully good. And our biggest challenge, I remember when I took the job, was we got to get past Auburn first. We just got to catch them, because at the time we were so far behind where they were as a program. But that game, I remember playing in that game against the guys like Gerald White and Frank Ford and Jeff Moore and Chris Morris, all those guys. But and then coaching in it, we had great games as well. So Cliff had it rolling really well over there. He did a phenomenal job. And anyway, it was a lot of fun.
Coach Mark Gottfried is with us, former Alabama player and Alabama head coach. And you played some really good SECs, but, I mean, you hear people like Billis saying, I've never seen anything like this in any conference, Coach. I mean, that's the other thing we've talked about. This is actually for outright possession of the SEC lead with 6 games to go, beyond just being number 1 and number 2.
I think I listened to Bruce's comments yesterday, and he's so right. When you're all of us that are involved in basketball, all the players I coached, all the coaches that have been there, you're always fighting for to grab the state's attention, because football is so big year round, and deservingly so, the success Alabama's had in football. But you're just kind of fighting for that all the time. And really, to be honest, in my last couple of years there, I got a little grumpy about it, because we had been ranked number 1 and we'd been to the Elite Eight and we'd done some things, and it was you're still kind of fighting. So anytime there's a game like this one where both teams are ranked 1-2, which, by the way, I thought Alabama should have clearly been number 1 in the AP poll. But both teams 1-2, it just creates so much interest for basketball in the state. And there's great basketball in the state of Alabama. And so many times it just gets overlooked. And, I had Richard Hendricks on my podcast the other day, and we talked about it. And, a lot of the players, we all feel the same way. We love Alabama basketball, and I'm sure Auburn basketball, but you're always fighting for that attention. And right now, the whole country is going to pay attention, which is wonderful for the state of Alabama and the sport of basketball.
The three of us have always said you can coexist as a football and basketball school, but, I remember doing this early in my career where there was a moment you were the highest paid coach in Tuscaloosa. And that was a big deal. It would be a much bigger deal now. But internally,
Nate Oats would love that. Trust me.
Internally, was there any kind of I don't know, any kind of awkwardness? Was there any animosity towards you?
There was probably some, and I think Mike Shula was there then. I was. How about this one? A lot of people don't realize this. In my 11 years as the head coach, we had 5 head football coaches in 11 years. You guys will all remember that period, starting with Mike DeBose, and then I was there obviously Nick's first probably year and a half. So that whole stretch, and football was struggling. And we, I think had done a pretty good job and all that, but it was a little bit awkward. And I think you could hear the grumblings of people like, wow, I can't believe this is actually happening. But, in time, it all settles itself out. Alabama football is always going to be and should be. There's such a, and what Nick did there was unreal. So that program nationally deserves all that attention. But like I said, when you're a player and a coach there, you feel it. Everybody feels it. And Nate has done such an amazing job, elevating that program, I think, to another level. We'd all done a good job, but I think Nate has taken it to another level. But I just love the fact that people are talking about basketball. And you know what? There's a lot of basketball fans in Alabama that have just when you're winning, they just kind of come out. And you wish they were there the whole time. But I'm glad for this game and for the state.
So I'm in the desert last year at the Dome, and Alabama comes running out for warm-ups for the Final Four. And truthfully, I had to fight back tears a little bit. I just never thought I'd see it. And
was it because of that one practice coach put you through?
I just never thought I'd
tears.
But I was sitting there and I got a little emotional. And for a guy that wore the uniform, I instantly thought back to your team in the 80s, which I thought was one of the best teams in the country. To me, that should have been the first team to go to the Final Four. I thought your team, and you let me down in the 80s, and Nate was able to deliver.
Hey, Jim, I'm sorry. I really am sorry.
Thank you. I've been waiting years for that. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, I felt the same way you did, Jim. I was so happy for Alabama and for all of us that played and coach. I played and coached. So I'm a little different than most everybody. But for all of us, it was such a great moment. And the team in 2002 that I had, that we were a 2 seed in the tournament and got upset by Kent State, who went to the Elite Eight, and they almost made it to the Final Four. But, that was a team I thought had a great chance to get there. Our Elite Eight team I had, I think if we'd have played anybody other than UConn that year in 2004, we might have been able to crack through there. They were just so good. They were too dominant. They won the whole thing that year. But I felt like you did, Jim. I was so happy for Alabama and what it does for, again, people's attention. And I'll give you an example. When I coached at NC State, there were North Carolina basketball fans that I'm not sure they knew that North Carolina had any other sports. They just went to the store and bought a North Carolina hat, and they followed North Carolina basketball. And they didn't know if they had a football team or not. It was almost like a pro team. Alabama football has always been that way. You have fans that wear that Alabama hat proudly, but they're basically just football fans. And I think games like today, it kind of creates a lot more energy and the fan base, and it just does so much, just like the Final Four did last year. I was so proud and so happy for the program in general. And hopefully they can get there again and maybe even win it. That'd be spectacular if they can do that.
You mentioned Coach Mark Gottfried is with us. You mentioned you looked at Bruce Pearl, some of what he was saying yesterday. Nate Oats will meet the media today. So you've looked at this matchup a little bit. I'll ask you kind of a 2-part question. If Auburn wins, they probably win. Why? If Alabama wins, they probably win. Why? I guess that's a weird way of asking you the key to victory for both teams.
Well, here's what I think you have to remember. There's still a lot of basketball left. And we do it all the time. Even as a coach or player, we do the same thing. You look down through the schedule and you go, okay, win, there's a win, there's a win, there's a win. There might be a loss. You go through that. But you still got to play every game. And when the ball goes in the air and the popcorn's popping, anything can happen. Anything can happen on a given night. So I don't think it's determined Saturday for sure. Certainly, whoever wins the game has a leg up. but you got two really good teams. I love the way that Nate's teams play. As a former player that was a pretty good shooter, I would have loved to play in that. Now, I love playing for Wimp Sanderson. Trust me, I love playing for Wimp. He was the best. But, the way they shoot the three, it puts so much pressure on other teams and how to guard them. I said that last year. The Elite Eight, Sweet 16, and Elite Eight games were in Los Angeles, and I was at those games as well. But the way that they play, it just puts a lot of pressure on your transition defense, getting back, finding shooters. Your defense ends up so spread out because you're guarding a three-point line. They have opportunities to get the drives to the basket. And I just think they're going to be a tough out. I think they're a tough out Saturday, Alabama is. And I think when they get in the tournament, they're going to be a tough out because of how they play. Nate has done a great job of adapting the style of play to, one, good shooters, two, the portal, helps him in the portal. It's a system that's not too tricky to learn, and so he can grab guys out of the portal and plug them in and get them playing pretty quickly. But then you take a look at Auburn. Boy, they're good too. And the kid from Morehead State, Broom, I think his name, is really a good player. And they benefited from the portal. But it's going to be a fun game to watch.
You played the position, but Mark Sears, All-American last year, he's still averaging 18 and 5 assists, so he's still very productive. But he looks much different this year to last year. It just seems a little off. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing. What do you account that to?
Sometimes I think, especially after a year like last year, the expectations are just so high, it's hard for anybody to reach them. And I think he's had a good year. I spent a year and a half with the Mavericks. I was scouting. That was when we drafted Luka and Jalen Brunson. And I tell people all the time that Mark reminds me of Jalen Brunson. And, he's a really good shooter. I don't think that he will fail at the next level. He'll find a way to get it done. But I think he's had a really good year. Last year I think he came out of nowhere, and we weren't really expecting him to be as good as he was. But I think down the stretch this year he's going to really rise up. And you had the game where Nate sat him in the second half, and I kind of like that. I don't like it for the player, but I like the fact that Nate got his attention. And I think, again, as the year goes down the stretch, he's going to be their catalyst. He's their leader all the way through.
I don't know if you heard, but that Luka guy you scouted, it didn't work out. They had to trade him eventually.
By the way, I'm in Newport Beach, so I'm not far from L.A. I like the trade myself. But I was shocked as anybody, and all my guys, we were at the Mavericks together. We were all scratching our head on that one. So we'll see.
The knock on Luka has been the conditioning, and he holds his 230 pounds on that 6'6" frame a lot differently than some other people.
Yeah, more like I do.
When you saw this kid for the first time, he might have been 17, 18. I mean, he's only 25 now, and that's what's incredible about the trade. You trade one of the best 5 players on the planet at 25, which is insane. But what did you initially see when you saw him as a teenager?
Well, it was interesting. Donnie Nelson was the general manager and Mark Cuban. They did such a great job of kind of camouflaging. That was our pick from the beginning. We went and watched all these games around the country, but people forget, Donnie had to pull off the trade with Atlanta with Trae Young and a draft pick. And that trade was agreed upon right before the draft on draft day. And Atlanta selected him third. We took Trae fifth. We swapped picks. And just to pull it off, I thought was an unbelievable coup at that time to get him. But he is so talented. And the scouts that we had in Europe, we'd get on conference calls, and those guys would, rave about, way better than Tony Kukoc, way better than Marshall Lanis that played for the Warriors way back in the day, way better than every single one of them. Like, there's never been a guy in Europe like this. So, when we drafted him, we were thrilled. And so, again, I was just stunned on that one. He's got so much basketball ahead of him, and now he's got LeBron to kind of tutor him on his conditioning and his body and diet and all those type things. So I got a feeling in the long haul this is going to be amazing for the Lakers.
I love social media because I've been able to keep up with you. I see you at Dodger games all the time. Laker. I mean, I see you living this California lifestyle. Better beaches. Is it out there or is it down on the Gulf Coast, man?
Oh, come on.
Not even close.
I love Orange Beach. I had a house there for 17 years, but California's pretty nice. And I am a massive Dodger fan. So, matter of fact, I'm going to head over to spring training, I think, in Arizona next week. But, It's been great. My family's still in Mobile, and I get back there, 4 or 5 times a year. I got to tell you guys a great story real quick. I hope we have time.
Oh, yeah.
Farmer flew to Nashville last year, and Jim and I got in the car, and Jim and I drove down to Birmingham. We took, Coach Sanderson to lunch, and then we went back to the house, and we sat with him. And it's a funny story. The first thing he said, we sit on the couch, and he looked right at Jim and I said, if you go back to 1987, I don't think I had y'all ready to play against Providence. It's my fault. And we're like, Coach, it's been like 40 years. You can let it go. And it wasn't your fault. Trust us. And but that game still sticks with all of us when we got beat by Providence. But we had the best time, and we absolutely loved spending the afternoon. We stayed there 3 or 4 hours with Coach. We both talked to him pretty regularly. And absolutely love that guy. So it was, I'm sure he's proud too, like all of us that have been a part of Alabama basketball. But Jim and I had the best day possible, just sitting in the living room talking about all the different things and players and games. And, I hope people never, ever forget how good he was at Alabama. I think it was something like 8 out of 11 years he was in the SEC championship game of the tournament, something crazy like that, some ridiculous statistic. But anyway, we had the best day possible.
Did you go upstairs where all the pictures are on the wall and stuff? It's amazing.
We sat up there, Jim, and we sat upstairs and we looked at everything, and Jim and I had the best time. And, we thought we'd take him to lunch and be there maybe an hour, and we ended up staying almost the whole day. And we got on the front porch and said goodbye, and we all cried.
Oh, man.
It's just one of those days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, Coach.
That is. He's one of a kind. He is one of a kind, and you never forget what Wimp Sanderson did for Alabama, ever.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So he's a great guy. To just not end on tears, I was amazed the picture of him and Dolly Parton. That was the one that
Yeah. No, I was
probably like that one.
No, the most amazing. So we went over. He invited all of us and our wives over for steaks one night,
because he lost a bet, and instead of taking us to a restaurant, he decided to grill the steak,
or have me grill the steak.
Yeah,
he bought them.
Probably Winn-Dixie cuts.
Yeah. So he tells Lance, he's like, I know you want beer. I put some beer in a cooler in the garage. So Lance goes in the garage, comes in, cracks the beer, just goes, God, Coach, this is awful. I think this stuff's expired. He goes, well, they gave it to me when I was leaving Little Rock. I didn't know that stuff went bad.
It had been sitting in his patio closet for 8 years.
Since he left Little Rock. It would have been like a decade ago.
He is one of a kind. One of a kind.
The best.
He's the best.
Coach, it is always good to talk to you. Good to see you again. Glad you're doing well. The podcast, CoachMarkGottfried.com. CoachMarkGottfried.com for everything Coach is doing. He mentioned our buddy Richard Hendricks on there recently, so go support that.
Sadly, it's so good. I mean, we're professionals at this.
Oh, yeah,
and
right.
I watch him, and I'm like, he's a damn basketball player and coach.
I know, and he's better
And
than
then
us.
he's got this podcast, and he's really good at it. And I'm like, damn, I can't be good at anything better than these coaches and players.
Thank you,
really
guys.
good.
It's been a lot of fun doing that, but thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's been fun.
Yep, good to talk to you. See you, Coach. Take care.
Okay, guys.
That is Coach Mark Gottfried, the former Alabama player and coach, CoachMarkGottfried.com, to keep up with everything he's doing. He was with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.